Hey guys, welcome back to the Wellham's World YouTube channel. Today we are back with another tier list, and this is quite a big one, the biggest one I've done so far in terms of Pokemon specifically, I think ever really. I think even the ones that I did on every Call of Duty Zombies map and every Call of Duty Zombies character, I don't think are actually this big. So today we're doing every single Cantonian Pokemon, every single Gen 1 Pokemon, so if they get any evolutions later on, or split evolutions, like for example Politoed or Annihilate, things like that, or Mega Evolutions, they don't count. It's literally the first 151 in the Pokedex. That's it. That's what we're looking at today, the original region. So there's a lot to go through today. So much so it doesn't all fit on the screen, and obviously I know that I'm in the bottom corner covering up some of it, but we've got the same tiers as usual. Top 5: great, good, meh, and not a fan. They're the standards that we've sort of set for the tiers in the Pokemon tier lists. So without further ado, realistically, I think we could probably get into it quite quickly. They're all ordered in Pokedex order. I think when I talk about a Pokemon, I'll probably talk about the whole evolution line. If there is an evolution line and it's applicable to do that, I'll do that in one sort of go. However, I'm not saying that I'm going to go in order from 1 to 151. I'll dot about, and once I think of a Pokemon that I want to talk about it, and there might be something else that pops up in my mind about a different Pokemon, so on and so forth. However, there is no greater place to start than the very beginning. Now, I think this one's actually going to end up being slightly controversial, because I know there's all sorts of discussion that I've seen on like sort of TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, whatever it may be, about the starter Pokemon. Always, no matter what the generation is, people say that they've fallen off and certain generations are better than others. Obviously, we all know that Gen 4 with Piplup, Turtwig, and Chimchar is literally the greatest starter trio ever. And I've previously done a tier list on every starter Pokemon, first evolution, ever. And the first one is obviously Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur, and I think they can all go in great. I'm going to actually stick them in that order. I'll try and stick them in as much of an order as possible when I do it as well. I think Bulbasaur, I like the sort of green colour more so than the blue it becomes, and I do think he becomes quite ugly. However, the like facially speaking as well, like I feel like he's pretty cute, and he also, Venusaur loses these sort of markings that he has. I know they change colour with Ivysaur a little bit, like in terms of the tint to it, but I do like the sort of stage in the evolution, and there's no real rhyme or reason as to why these are going in certain places. I'm not going to be like, statistically, this is the best Pokemon to use in a battle, or this is the best Pokemon for this and that. It's going to be, do I like it? Do I think it's cool? Do I think it's cute? Do I think is it my favourite? Do I have any feelings for it? And that's kind of what this meh category is the ones that I just like have no feelings either way. But I think we'll start off with a great. I did put Ivysaur pretty high up. I'm pretty sure he was 4th when I did the starters tier list. I think I had spoiler alert, Squirtle and Charmander ahead of him, and I think I had Turtwig ahead of him as well. But aside from those, I think he's absolutely fantastic, and I do, like I say, I like the progression with the bulb sort of becoming and blooming, but I do just think he becomes a little bit ugly, and he's also a tank in the games. Slow, but he's tanky. Knows some really great moves. Sleep Powder's always a favourite of mine. Mega Drain, things like that. Giga Drain, I think he even can learn at some point. Leech Seed, always a banger. And looking at it, I might as well carry on in the same vein with these. You know what, actually, I'm going to start with the starters. What better place to do it than the starters? And I think these are also all great. The progression from Charmander to Charizard is awesome. I do like this sort of red Charmeleon colour. I almost wonder what it would be like. Would it be even cooler if Charizard had that kind of red hue to him? And then maybe this like stomach part was the orange. But anyway, I digress. I think in terms of the games, he's always a favourite. He's iconic. You know, it's Charizard. I think he kind of just actually what I'm gonna do is no, we'll leave it as is, because not having him in order is probably gonna do my head in a little bit. So yeah, I think iconic in terms of the TV show as well. Obviously, Ash basically saves Charmander from death. His flames going out in the rain. Then when he evolves into Charmeleon, he's a bit of a dick, and then he kind of wins him over. Then he evolves into Charizard, becomes sort of lazy and doesn't listen to him until they have to, like, can't remember exactly when it is, but they have like a moment where, you know, the respect is, I think it's, he gets fainted in a fight and his flame's starting to go out, and Ash and Misty basically set a campfire to try and like fan his flame, and I think that's when he sort of clicks and becomes like not an asshole essentially. So yeah, bit of an icon really. And finally, we'll put for the starters at least, I'm going to put Squirtle and Wartortle in great, and I'm going to put Blastoise as the first entrant into the top 5. Blastoise is my favourite final evolution starter, I think potentially ever. Not actually. Infernape and Torterra probably top it. But other than that, not many better, not many more iconic. Certainly I think water starters, maybe Feraligator's up there for water starters as well, but that's besides the point. Certainly well deserved top 5. The progression, like I say, I like the fact that the colours get a bit darker with him, because I get why it's doing it, because obviously it's more like, it's kind of, that takes away from the sort of youthfulness, I suppose, or like it kind of makes him look a bit more like sort of tough. But the shell cannons is really cool. I do kind of think he should maybe have kept the tail a little bit, or the ears or something from Wartortle, but I don't know if that would look weird in terms of, but I feel like some of these that I'm going to discuss a bit later, they're either too similar to the previous evolution, like the previous one in the chain, or they're like, there's some features that if you just changed it probably would make it look a bit better, or like more seamless as a progression in terms of evolution, and there's a few that I'm going to discuss that I feel that way with. And you know what, looking through this list, I actually think we might as well just continue on. We might as well just go in order for the time being, if not for the whole thing really. So we'll continue on with Caterpie, good, Metapod, good, and I'm going to put Butterfree in great. I think Butterfree is a very cool design. I do actually, based on what I was just saying, I almost think it looks like it should have been a Venonat evolution. Like, if you put Venonat, Venonat's not obviously going in great, but just for the purpose of it, like if you look, the eyes are the same, the antenna it's got, and it kind of looks like maybe it should have been an evolution from that, which is popping back in there. Maybe if he'd have kept some of the colouring or patterns or something from Caterpie, then, you know, obviously it's the whole thing from caterpillar going into a cocoon and then going into a butterfly. And Butterfree's got some really cool moves, and Caterpie's adorable, and Metapod's just pretty cool. It's my favourite out of the two sort of 3-stage bug types in this region. We'll move on to Weedle, Kakuna, and Beedrill, and I'm actually going to put them all in meh. I just don't think they're that interesting to me. It's a giant bee with drill hands, and it stems from Weedle, which I just think is less interesting to me. It looks kind of like a Wiggler from Mario Kart, or Mario in general. And yeah, it's just not really, it doesn't really do it for me. If I was going to choose one of the sort of evolution trees, like a bug type to have, I probably would just choose Butterfree, go that way through it. And obviously typings are a little bit different, and moves that they can learn are a little bit different, but still, just wouldn't really do that. you know. Next, we are going with Pidgeot, or Pidgeotto and Pidgeot. A lot of people online will say that this is the worst of the early root bird, or one of the worst of the early root bird. But when you've got Staraptor, Corviknight, uh, they are obviously better. I would probably put it top 3, top 5 in terms of generations of early root birds. But obviously, even Fletchling, Fletchinder and Talonflame are probably I'd put ahead of them. Normal flying type. It's not the most exciting typing in the world, but I am going to put it in Pidgey in good. I know a lot of people just say, yeah, but it's a pigeon. Right, but it's Pidgey, And I'm going to put Pidgeotto head of Butterfree and Pidgeot. I think the only thing I would potentially think would make sense would be, I just don't see too much sometimes. I know Pidgeot kind of gets the extra hair sort of thing, he gets the red and yellow hair, but it would make sense for Pidgeotto to have the red hair and then the red tail feathers, and then Pidgeot to get the multicolored tail feathers as well as the multicolored hair, and also the Pidgeot. I feel like maybe the name means something that I don't get, but I feel like Pidgeots and then into Pidgeotto would be like the second stage, because it go Pidgey, then Pidgeot, then Pidgeotto. But I don't know if the Otto part means something in a different language, or something that has been named after that could mean little, things like that. That I'm just not quite grasping with my brain. But still amazing. Really love. And also when we did the Let's Go Eevee playthrough on my stream, we had a Pidgeot that came, basically was our first Pidgey, was our first catch, and he was with us the whole way, and he was actually goated. Played a huge part in the team. So bit of this is all nostalgia based as well, to be fair. There are a lot of modern Pokemon that I think are really awesome too, but there's just a soft spot for Pidgey in that line. So next we'll move on to Rattata and Raticate, and I'm going to put Rattata in good, and I'm going to put Raticate in not a fan, and I'll explain why. A lot of people will probably say, well, no one really gives a shit about Rattata, and yeah, I suppose so, but I like it. I like that it's, a lot of these are just going to be, well, yeah, but it's based on, some of the argument that you get for modern Pokemon, there's a set of keys and things like that, and then there's a lot of, they've become too sort of humanoid, and they were based on animals, and now they're kind of, there's the sword, there's one that's based on a sword, there's one that's based on, inanimate objects. So this is kind of where it stemmed from, is these animals, but obviously when you've got over 1,000 Pokemon, it's hard to think of 1,000 things to base them on. So a rat is obviously going to be, especially early, when you've got a pigeon and a caterpillar and a worm, you're obviously going to probably think of a rat. And but the thing is that puts it into good is the colouring for me. And if you look at Alolan, Rattata and Raticate, I think they would both go in good for me. But the thing I don't like for me is it becomes too just like a regular hamster, more than a rat anyway. It goes from a rat to a hamster shape, like a Syrian hamster. But if it was purple, if it kept the colourway, it probably would end up in good as well. It wouldn't be any higher by any means, it's Raticate. But I do like Raticate, and I like that he can learn Bite and Crunch, because you can use them in Lavender Town and things like that. So yeah, I like him, but I like Rattata. I just think it kind of loses something a little bit for me when it evolves, because it just becomes a hamster, and I like hamsters. But yeah. And next, I'm gonna go a similar theme in Spearow and Fearow. I like Spearow's design quite a bit. I know it's very similar to Pidgey, but obviously based on a sparrow rather than a pigeon. But I like the sort of spikiness, I like the sharp beak and the wing, and I think it just kind of, the evolution, it makes it a little bit more ugly, but it doesn't really add anything to me. I don't think it looks any better. You lose the colouring from the wings, the colouring from the abdomen. You lose sort of the sort of spiky look, and I know it's kind of a bit of a juvenile look, and then it evolves, but it feels like maybe second stage in there, which showed a bit more progression, I'd maybe understand it a bit more. But as it just is a bit jarring and a bit ugly. Now, that sounds a bit mean, but that's what I'm going to say. Moving on, we've got Ekans and Arbok. And did you know Ekans, the name Ekans, is snake backwards, and Arbok is cobra backwards, but spelled with a K instead of a C. Although, to be fair, if you're from certain countries, like I'm pretty sure, Germany spells it with a K. Not the point. That's just something that kept coming up in my stream series on Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I'd always mention it, and it became a bit of a sort of, whenever we'd come up against an Ekans or an Arbok, someone in chat would be like, did you know? Which is quite funny. And I'm going to put them both. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put Ekans in good. And I'm going to put Arbok in great. I really like Arbok, and I like it feels like a bit of a glow up. Keeps the colouring the same though, but it just looks meaner, more vicious, looks more of a threat. Would be cool if he kept the rattle and still a rattlesnake, but I get that he's a cobra and not just like a rattlesnake. Understand that. But the markings are cool, and he was an absolute nightmare for me in my Let's Go Eevee. Always poisoning me whenever I fought Team Rocket, do my head in, and coughing and wheezing as well, which I will get to. And Zubat and Golbat, actually. I was getting poisoned a lot in that playthrough, and it was doing my head in. But Team Rocket, obviously iconic in the series. Jessie has the Ekans, which then evolves into an Arbok. So I guess maybe that's also a reason why it kind of becomes why I like it as well a bit more than some people might, because obviously at the end of the day it's just a snake is the argument. But maybe that's why I like it more, is because I've watched a lot of the anime. I guess I was going to say a lot of the show, cartoon, anime, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it is an anime. I've watched a lot of it and have grown fond of the Pokemon that appear frequently in it, and that's why Pikachu is going to go in great as well. And I think he's going to go there. He's going to go ahead of the Bulbasaur. I think I just prefer Charmander. The Let's Go series I did was on Eevee, because that's the game we have, because that's just the one we got. But I know there's a Let's Go Pikachu, obviously, because Pikachu is basically the poster boy in terms of the poster boy of Pokemon, and it's great, awesome. And in the show it's awesome as well. And Raichu's sick as well. Very sick. I really like Raichu. Still goes in great. Fuck it, we'll put them together. There's that episode where Pikachu has to fight a Raichu. Banger. Pikachu always comes in clutch as well. Has some crazy power in the show, obviously. And I just think, you can't really argue with that. Just banger Pokemon. Sandshrew, good. Sandslash, great. Not much to say about it, obviously, based on sort of like an armadillo type vibe. But just looks a bit meaner. Almost, I think Sandslash almost looks like a middle stage. Like I think I saw a YouTube short once where it was like, oh, what if every Pokemon was a 3-stage evolution chain kind of thing. And they did one for Sandshrew, Sandslash, and then I can't remember what the third one was called, but essentially a third evolution of Sandslash, like the next evolution chain. Obviously Pikachu and Raichu got Pichu later added. I think I saw that they did one for they basically were going through the Pokedex and doing it for the ones that didn't have them. They would add a third, and I think that's where I saw the thing about Spearow and Fearow, if there was one in the middle, which I think is where I saw that initially. And I can't for the life of me think, I think it was just I saw it one day and scrolled through as I was going through. If I find it again when I'm editing this and looking, I'll link it. Quite interesting series, but yeah, I think Sandslash almost looks slightly middle evolution, but nonetheless still very cool. Very cool indeed. And I'm going to do the same thing. Look, I think Nidoran female and Nidoran male are both good. To be fair, Nidoran male also had my absolute life. Poison jabs, doing my nutting. And I think Nidorina, actually, you know what, Nidorina and Nidorino can stay in good. I think it's quite a nice progression, but Nidoqueen, and Nidoking. Bangers. Such good Pokemon. And I would be tempted to put the middle stages in great as well, but I think I just like the subtle progression between Nidoran and Nidorina to sort of become like bipedal, and then Nidoran to Nidorino it's just a bigger, meaner version of him, and then he's become absolute tanks, big beasts, and I love it. I think it's great. Moving on, Clefairy, Clefable. I'm looking at this basically so far, and it's going to be a very top heavy because I love these Pokemon for like the most part. There are a few that I don't like, and I'll get onto them obviously as we go through. But it's going to be quite, not necessarily top heavy. There's going to be a lot in good. I think good's going to fill out quite substantially. There's going to be quite a few more in meh, but I think Clefairy, Clefable, I just would never use them. For the life of me, I forgot that when the first gen initially came out, I don't think there was a fairy type. So I think Clefairy and Clefable were normal, and I think they gained the fairy typing later on, if I'm not mistaken. I know Let's Go Eevee, I'm pretty sure they were normal fairy, but I don't think they were like that. I'm pretty sure fairy was added later. If that's wrong, by all means, I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it went down. I've not really ever used fairy types, which is weird because I know they're strong. I'm aware that they're very strong, but I just never used them, so I have no feelings either way. We'll move on to Vulpix and Ninetales, and I'm going to put Vulpix, maybe a little bit controversially, in meh, and then Ninetales can go into good. Again, there are just other fire types I'd rather use. I'd rather use a Charmander, Charizard type vibe. I'd rather use a Magmar. I'd rather use a Rapidash, and I'd rather use Flareon. I'd rather use Arcanine. Basically every fire type I think I've just named. So there's just other, but I still think I think Vulpix is just so meh because it just looks, it's just there, it's kind of cute, but other than that, but I think the Ninetales design is very slick. I think what would have been potentially cooler would have been, so if it kept some of these sort of, it maybe the tail colours progressed from like as if it was a flame, so obviously it would look a bit like warmer as it got more to the centre. Is that right? Something like that. Red to like orange to yellow kind of thing in the tail. But I just think the design for Ninetales is really slick as well. Jigglypuff, good. Wigglytuff, meh. I'll be honest, sometimes I forget that Wigglytuff was in Gen 1 as an evolution, because I just never used Jigglypuff enough to evolve it. Jigglypuff also obviously features quite heavily in the show in parts, as reoccurringly. But Wigglytuff, kind of just forgotten, really. That's why I just don't have any. It's not that I dislike it. I think it's fine. It's a little bit more like rabbit-like, almost, in a way. But just for me, no. It's just, I would forget about it every time. I think Igglybuff, actually, the pre-evolution that they introduced to Jigglypuff, it's not great either. The eyes are horrible. But Jigglypuff is like a good middle ground kind of thing. It's like a good solid Pokemon. Zubat and Golbat. Now listen, Golbat. Okay, how do I describe this? How do I word what I want to say? Zubat, and it's an absolute nightmare. Like playing Let's Go Eevee and even Pokemon Go, trying to catch a Zubat when it's so erratic does my head in. And every time I play against a Zubat on Let's Go Eevee, I get poisoned, and it does my absolute head in. So I'm tempted to put him in not a fan, just because it really annoys the absolute ever-living shit out of me. And it's not meh. The feeling's not like a mutual, neutral feeling. It's a feeling of disdain towards Zubat. But the thing is, I like the Zubat design, and I know it's just a bat, and I like some of his movesets. If I have a Zubat, that's fine, and I really like Golbat. Golbat's definitely going in good. And it's not that I'm not a fan of Zubat as a Pokemon. I am a fan of Zubat as a Pokemon, but I'm not a fan of coming up against him. So, I'm going to put him in good, but with an asterisk of I hate him, but he's good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like him, but I hate him. Yeah, weird way to word it, but Oddish, great. Look at him, adorable, absolutely adorable. Love Oddish, think he's great. Gloom, not. Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Not a fan. Think it's a proper down. Like, the potential for Oddish is really cool. And I think Vileplume, actually, I'm going to put in good. Because I like Vileplume as a final evolution. I just think Gloom is just super ugly. The thing I actually find ugly about Vileplume is that he has Oddish's face. Which, on Oddish, is fine because it looks kind of cute. But on Vileplume, looks a bit off. And I think just Gloom, there's just something about it that just not a fan. I think it's ugly. Parasect. Would never really use them. Not really my first choice bug type. Probably would rather have a Parasect actually over a Beedrill. But not over a Butterfree. I probably would have it over Venomoth. However, I really like the kind of lore behind it, that like the Paras is this like crab / bug thing, and then it basically the parasitic mushroom fungus that lives on its back takes it over, and obviously you can see its whited out eyes basically being like, it's like dead but being controlled by the fungus. It's really fucking messed up, but really cool. And there's obviously an episode in the series with Paras in it, which is a very cute episode. Basically, where Paras is like really crap at battling, and Ash tries to train someone's Paras with his Bulbasaur, and Bulbasaur like taps him and it faints him. It's a very, very good episode. Love that episode. I think it's great. Venonat and Venomoth are going in meh. Just think I would use them over Beedrill. Weedle, Cocoon, and Beedrill. I'd rather have Venonat, Venomoth, but I just would never use them. And like I said, I think Venonat suits Butterfree more. I think if you swapped Venomoth and Butterfree around, it would look weird because Venomoth doesn't really fit in with the Caterpie line. But the design for Butterfree works. Like if you gave Venomoth Butterfree's eyes and antenna, I think it would kind of like work a bit more. But I like the colouring of Venomoth as well, to be fair. I'm quite a big fan of that. Do like a purple, which there's a lot of purple on this screen actually, to be fair. We'll carry on with Diglett and Dugtrio. Good. And good. I like I like Diglett and I like Dugtrio. I know there was the that series I was talking about with the shorts with the middle evolution or the third evolution thing. They did a middle evolution with Dugtrio, obviously. And I like the sort of meme where it's like, what does Diglett look like underground? And it's like this big buff thing with like, you know, when like Plankton in the second SpongeBob film gets like super buffed because he writes himself with superpowers, and he's got still bought like the tiny Plankton head, but he's like massively buff. Looks like that, but I don't know why. That's probably more niche than the meme. If anyone's seen the second SpongeBob movie and knows what I mean, let me know in the comments, because I feel like that reference is actually more niche than just saying the meme where Diglett's super buff underneath the ground, because I feel like that got quite popular, at least in like the Pokemon sort of circle, because it was funny. That was a weird tangent. I'm sorry for that. Don't know why I brought up SpongeBob in a Pokemon tier list video. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Meowth, good. Meowth is awesome in the series. Obviously, there's a lot of moments where Meowth is obviously like going along with Team Rocket's plan, and I feel like this is like just because I've been watching. There's a Pokemon channel on the Fire Stick, and I've just been watching like from the beginning onwards. Basically, it's a lot of time where Meowth basically goes along. I know he sometimes creates the schemes and stuff, but a lot of the time he goes along with Team Rocket because they're like bad, and he just like basically loves them so much that he'll go along with their plans. But then like there's times where on Pokemon Island where he gets separated and he's with Ash's Pikachu Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and they're all together, and he's like proper chill with them, and he kind of like almost befriends them, and then finds Team Rocket again, and then turns not evil, but turns against him again. And there's another one where I think Meowth, there's another Pokemon that basically he gets separated with, and I want to say it's a Chikorita in the second in the Johto region. And they basically have this massive bonding thing, and then he goes back to Team Rocket, and you kind of think, Meowth's not a bad guy. He's just falling in with the wrong crowd. But then there's also times where James and Jesse, like there's like that part of like humanity to them, where they're kind of like, they're not actually evil. They're just trying to get money and trying to not lose their jobs essentially. But their boss is evil and kind of pushing them to do it. That was a weird tangent, but anyway, Persian, meh. There's actually someone I do want to say, Galarian Meowth into Berserker is a really cool evolution. And I think Persian, obviously it's a pretty standard evolution, but I think maybe if it kept something like the brown, like the feet colouring on it, and I get the sort of level up from like the gold thing to the gem. I get it like as a concept, but doesn't do anything for me. Psyduck, whacking him in great. Golduck, whacking him in good. Psyduck is, especially in the show as well, is great. But I do like Psyduck quite a lot. But I'd always catch a Psyduck and put him in my team, but I wouldn't ever keep him around long enough to become a Golduck, because Golduck's not really one I would use that often. Kind of think maybe Golduck should keep the colouring. If he's called Golduck, he should be gold, not blue, I think. But still, I think like the evolution in terms of the actual design is a good evolution. It looks good, but maybe not like I just think the colouring, just if that was maybe slightly different, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but still good. Mankey, great. Actually, you know what? No, Mankey's going to stay there. Primape's... I just feel weird not putting them next to each other. Feels weird. If they're in the same tier, I'm going to put them next to each other. Fuck it. But Mankey and Primeape are great. There's the episode where Ash loses his hat to a Primeape, and he basically has a scrap with him, and then enters a fighting tournament with the Primeape and win it. It's a good episode. But Primeape also in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet becomes Annihilate, which is even better. But I think I said in my fighting tier list, if Annihilate didn't exist, Primeape would be in the top 5 of fighting type Pokemon. However, Annihilate does exist, so he wasn't in the top 5, and I don't think he makes top 5 in Kanto either, but I think he's a very good... I do like the fighting type Pokemon actually a lot in this region, but I don't really think he breaks top 5 for me. Growlithe, great. Fire Dog, very cool. In the series is obviously used by the police in the show, and Officer Jenny in the show. But then Arcanine, I'd never truly... Arcanine's top 5. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Arcanine is easily top 5. Probably my favourite, I would say, favourite fire type Pokemon in Gen 1. I'd rather have an Arcanine than I think generally than a Charizard. I know in my Pokemon Let's Go Eevee playthrough I did use Charizard, but I also used Blastoise and Venusaur, sorry. So I had the 3 starters in the team. But Arcanine is goated, and he's also massive. That's what I was going to say. Didn't realise how huge he was. But if you go on Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and you have him in your party and you ride him around, he's massive. And I never really properly realised how massive he was. We'll move on to Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath. Great. More great designs. The progress from Tadpole, I suppose. I always did think that there wasn't enough of like a progression between Poliwhirl and Poliwrath, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. Like, he is just bigger and buffer and just a bit more angry, and I don't really think you necessarily need a huge, like a massive, to go from a small Pokemon to a massive Pokemon is what I was trying to say. I think that's a good progression, and I'm going to do the same thing with Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam. I don't necessarily think there's much of an improvement on that from Kadabra to Alakazam, I should say. He actually loses his big what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put Abra and Kadabra in great, and then move Alakazam, because he kind of loses some of the stuff that, like, his mustache is bigger and he gets an extra spoon, but that's about it. I actually prefer the Kadabra design because of the big bushy tail. And I'm going to do Machop, Machoke, and Machop. And this is what I mean by a top heavy tier list. I think all these designs and Pokemon are great. Machop is one of the I really like him. I like that he's basically like a Pokemon where his body is just entirely made up of muscle, and he's just massive. And in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, miners in the Orbra mine use him to just smash and pummel rocks, which I think is great. I think the progress or the evolution to Machoke is good, and into Machamp it just basically becomes a big muscly freak with 4 arms. Very cool. I do actually think he should have kept these red like stripes that are on his arm, markings on his arm. Probably should have kept them when he went into Machamp, and I also probably would have just kept the same colouring, because like this Machoke, the Machoke colouring is kind of a bit more greyed out, and then he kind of goes back to it. And also I think Machamp's face or his lips maybe is something a bit off. I think if he had a similar sort of head shape to Machoke, it would look less off. But anyway, nonetheless, still a great evolution chain. Bellsprout, great. Weeping Bell, good. Victory Bell, back to great. I just think there's something weird about, like, a bit unnerving looking about Weeping Bell. Just looks a bit strange. But I think Bellsprout's a very cool early root grass type. Knows some really great moves, can hit like a truck when it becomes Victory Bell as well. I think Victory Bell just looks vicious and mean. And obviously in the show, James has a Victory Bell, and it just always, whenever he like throws it out of his Pokeball, it always just eats him. It's always funny. But Weeping Bell, kind of just a bit meh. Loses the vine a little bit. Maybe if it had a bit more of a vine kind of vibe. Kind of gets it back with Victory Bell as well, but it just looks like with the teeth in the mouth, just looks a bit more menacing, like it actually wants to like battle someone and you know, do damage. Tentacle, I'm going to put in good. Tentacruel, I'm going to put in great. I love the Tentacruel design so much. Just think it's a big mean jellyfish. And obviously the whole point of the red parts at the top is like it's like false eyes as well. Just think also, for some reason this comes to my mind. Toadstool and Toadstool in Gen 9, Scarlet and Violet, they're basically like Tentacruel, but instead of being like jellyfish, it's like a toadstool, grass type. Just think it's very cool. Don't know why I mentioned it, but I did. Geodude and Graveler I think are cool, and I'm going to put Golem. Yeah, I think meh is the right place for Golem at the moment. I'm tempted potentially to put him in not a fan, but so for me, sorry, I got my mic lead caught up. For me, Geodude into Graveler is a very smooth transition. You know, they look very similar, the face is similar, things like that. And it becomes Golem, which I think on its own maybe would be fine as a Pokemon, like if it was just its own separate Pokemon. But as an evolution from Graveler, it's just weird to me, and to the point where in like Let's Go Eevee, for example, you can only get a Golem if you trade a Graveler, so you get it through trade. I wouldn't even bother. I prefer the way that Graveler looks, and I think it looks more natural as an evolution, and Golem's just kind of a bit jarring. I like the sort of rocky, bouldery body, but like the head and arms just look a bit, and legs just look a bit off to me. Like if they were if maybe they look like they were more part of the body or something. I don't know. There's just something off about the design that I'm just not huge on. Ponyta, good. Rapidash, great. Rapidash is very cool indeed. Love Rapidash. Think it's a great Pokemon. Not much more to say about that. It's a horse that's mane and tail is fire. That's just pretty cool. It's just really good. And it's also fucking quick. So if you use it, it hits like an absolute beast and it's rapid. Hence the name. So yeah, I would absolutely, stick it in my team. It kind of looks a little bit like color-wise and stuff, very sort of almost similar to Ninetales, weirdly, which I've sort of only just noticed when they're kind of like next to each other. But anyway, I'm going to put Slowpoke and Slowbro in good. I like them. Not necessarily to use in a playthrough or anything like that, but I like the sort of the story that, Slowpokes will sit by a lake or by the ocean or something and put their tails into the water, and then a Shelder will bite its tail and it'll evolve basically from Slowpoke to Slowbro. So the thing on the back of it is a sort of, I guess, a different form of a Shelder or a Cloyster maybe, and the whole point is that it's like a symbiosis where the Cloyster that's clamped onto the back of the tail allows Slowpoke to be able to stand on its hind legs and walk and balance, and the Cloyster, or the Shelder, can then travel on land. So it's kind of like a symbiosis where they kind of mutually benefit each other. That's just quite an interesting backstory, which I think is kind of cool. And Magnemite and Magneton, I think they're just going good. I like them. I don't have it's not that I have no feelings towards them. I don't think they're particularly amazing. I like that, a Magneton is just 3 Magnemites that become like magnetically attached. That's fine with me. I think Magnezone is pretty cool as well, the third evolution that comes later on. Yeah, that's all. That's all there really is to say about Magnemite. There's that episode where I think Ash helps a Magnemite, and some Magneton get rid of like Grimer and Muck that are like causing issues in like a city, which I think is a interesting episode. And also in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, when we went to get that Zapdos, there were a load of Magnemite everywhere, and we didn't get a Zapdos. So hard times indeed. Farfetch'd goes in great. If this was Galarian Farfetch'd, it would stay in great, but Sirfetch'd is obviously really cool as well. I just prefer the Galarian version with the fighting type, and I think that's exactly where it deserves to go. Doduo and Dodrio, and you know what, I'm going to chuck Seal and Dugong in there as well. Doduo and Dodrio, I like sort of the idea that it's an ostrich type vibe. Ostrich / emu / there's like, is it called a cassowary, where their like claws are like mega sharp and they can rip people apart. That's a real life bird, by the way. And I like the fact that Dodrio, the 3 heads are kind of like different personalities, and they're like, sometimes they just attack each other because they can't coexist, which I think is quite funny. Still, I don't think there's anything like massively special about them, and it's the same with Seal and Dugong. Seal is just a seal, and Dugong, while it looks a little bit prettier than Seal, I think it's probably just the mouth part and the eyes, but it doesn't really look like much of a evolution. It just looks like a similar / same. It looks like it would be like a different form. Like Seal would be the water type, and then Dugong would like be an ice type, and then they'd both evolve separately, kind of thing. Grimer and Muck, I think, also go in meh. I have no real feelings towards them. Would never use them in a playthrough of any Pokemon, personally. And they're just slime. I don't think there's not real like any real sort of personality to them. Too much, except for actually Ash's Muck in the show, but that's because it's in the show and they give it a little bit more of a personality. Shelder and Cloyster both going good. I think Shelder gets a few more points from me because the story with the Slowpoke becoming a Slowbro. Cloyster's absolutely fine. It's a hell of a glow up. I'll be honest, it's a hell of a glow up. But still, I don't think really goes any higher than good, to be completely honest. And here we go. Ghastly. Haunter. Gengar. Spoiler alert, Gengar is my favourite Pokemon ever. Some people call me basic because I like Gengar the most. Sorry, the being right is basic, but Gengar is the best Pokemon. It's it's a very cool typing as well, and I think that the evolution chain, I guess, is the best. Sort of the fact it goes from Ghastly to Haunter. I like that it's. I actually kind of think that in the sort of show and things like that, to keep quoting the show, and I also think with it I think Gengar does lose a little bit of its like aura with the 3D sprites in the game. I just think it doesn't look quite as cool as it does in like the cartoon and stuff, but it's hard to make that translate, I suppose. But Gengar in the show is awesome, and I do like the sort of in the show he is a bit more like has sort of he's not black in color like this like center part of the Ghastly, but he has like a bit of like darker like shadowy appearance in the show a lot of the time, which I do very much like. Onyx goes in meh. I like Brock in the show, and he uses Onyx, but other than that, there's not really much more to say about it. Drowsy and Hypno both go in meh as well. I think they would actually genuinely both go in good if the vision, the sort of progression was better for the evolution chain. I think the thing I like most about Drowsy is his like nose, and he's a tapir, right? So they lose that with Hypno. They gain like this ruffle around the neck, and he has like a pendulum. Absolutely fine. I kind of think maybe if he had like the brown like shading on the trousers or like legs kind of thing, and the nose, it would be a bit more. It would look a bit more smooth of a transition, and they could potentially both go in good. But for me, Drowsy, Hypno both go in meh. I'm going to put Krabby in meh as well, and I'm going to put Kingler in good, because Krabby, you just wouldn't. I wouldn't really bother catching one and using it because you've got other water types that are just far superior. For example, I'd rather have a Seadra, I'd rather have a Gyarados, I'd rather have a Blastoise, I'd rather a Golduck. I know Golduck's water psychic, but that's beyond the point. I'd probably rather even potentially have a Cloyster, because Cloyster can learn like Ice Beam and stuff, as can Blastoise, which I don't think Krabby or Kingler can. But I think I think Kingler is a better Pokemon. Obviously, that's why he's in good and Krabby's in meh. I almost feel like it's one of those where it could potentially do with a middle evolutionary stage, but maybe not. Okay, Voltorb and Electrode. I despise Voltorb and Electrode because they just fucking self-destruct all the time. It does my head in, and they just look like Pokeballs. And the thing I like annoys me as well when you're playing Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, you just think they're like Pokeballs sometimes that you can pick up, and then they're just not. You go into a battle with them, and then they self-destruct and either paralyze or faint one of your Pokemon. It's just really annoying, and I just think that the design's not necessarily lazy. I get why they're there, but I think the evolutionary chain sucks. I think the one thing I like about Voltorb is the eyes, and he loses that for like this for the Electrode. I just think it's just kind of wank, isn't it? It's not great. Execute goes in meh, and Executor goes in good. The weird thing is with Execute and Executor is like it goes from eggs to like a palm tree, which I think is a bit strange. I feel like it should go from like coconut type things to a palm tree. I mean, I like Executor. I think it's a cool Pokemon, but I just don't get I don't get where the evolutionary chain came from there. It's a bit, which just doesn't make sense to me. That's what I'll say. Cubone. Yeah. We'll do that. Cubone's awesome. Cubone's great. Really like. I don't know why I don't know why I was like so hesitant to do that. Yeah, Cubone top 5. I can justify that any day of the week. I think both in the game you have like a bit of a storyline with Cubone, and in the show, and I think his backstory is just absolutely like devastating. And there's a scene in Detective Pikachu, if anyone's seen that, where I don't remember what his name is, but Justice Smith's character tries to catch a Cubone and it just smacks the Pokeball back at him and then gets like really angry and starts trying to attack him. But Cubone is super adorable, and I think the Marowak would be even better. I know Alolan Marowak is a ghost type, right? I understand that, but I think if regular Marowak should be a ghost type anyway, because the whole point of the Cubone is that it wears its mother's skull. So I feel like the evolution, it kind of makes sense for it to be a ghost type, but it's not. So that's why it's going. That's why it's not. I don't think it's as cool or as good as Cubone. Cubone is just like, just the best. Well, not the best. Gengar's the best. Hitmonlee goes in great as well. The kicking demon. However, I would never, when you do the fighting dojo, choose a Hitmonlee over Hitmonchan. And this is the point where the final top 5 Pokemon to round off the top 5, Hitmonchan goes into it. Now, if you've also seen my Pokemon Sword playthrough, Hitmonchan was goated. He knew Drain Punch, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Fire Punch, and he was just really good against a bunch of different typings. Even like he's super weak to flying type as a fighting type Pokemon, but with that Thunder Punch, if he's had the speed advantage, which he quite frequently did, smash him in. And I think he's obviously my favourite fighting type Pokemon. If you've seen that episode or that video, he's number 1 on there, so no reason why he wouldn't be in the top 5 now. And I do have a thing here. I don't know if you can see how well you can see it on the camera. I don't want to move it too much because it will glare and it'll lose focus. But it's a piece of Pokemon artwork that has Arcanine, Gengar, Cubone, Hitmonchan. It's basically like a sort of fan art that Roxy did for me, which was if I was a Pokemon trainer, what would my team be? And it's Cubone, Gengar, Hitmonchan, Arcanine, who are all in my top 5. Obviously Blastoise in my top 5 as well. But there's also Ursaring and Lucario, which would be my 6th. But then I've got a little Oddish on my shoulder because Oddish is cool and he's a cutie. But he'd be like my buddy, but he wouldn't be one I'd use in battle, that kind of thing. But it's just a really cool piece of artwork, and that's kind of like, not many people can really, I don't think you can really see it. You can probably just see part of it, I imagine, when my camera's set up. Yeah, that kind of alluded to my top 5 pretty much, except for Blastoise. But Blastoise is the GOAT of Gen 1 starters, so he's going there. Lickitung. Who uses Lickitung? Does anyone? I don't. I don't know anyone in the world that would use Lickitung, really. Coughing goes into good. Wheezing also goes into good. Don't know why I was hesitating like that. Good. Very good. Just good. Good. James using it in the show gets him a bit more screen time, which maybe makes him, maybe if he wasn't like so prominently featured in the show, I wouldn't have care for it either way, which could lead to it to go into mess. So maybe that's a little bit of a bias there from the show. But also during my Let's Go Eevee playthrough, did my absolute head in, but no hard feelings. That's all done now, so it is what it is. Rhyhorn, Rhydon, both going great. Very cool. This is like one of those where I think, like, obviously I know eventually it gets a third stage of Rhyperior, but you know how Onyx gets Steelix eventually when they introduce a Steel type Pokemon? I think it would have been cool to have a split evolution. You know how like Poliwrath could become Politoed and things like that? I would have a split evolution where because he looks a bit steely there. I'd have like a split evolution where he becomes more, he stays on all fours and becomes this bigger and more so steely. If you like use like a magnetic item, I forget what it's called, that you use to evolve Onyx that you use on Rhyhorn. I think like a Steel Don or something. I don't know. Would absolutely slap. But Rhyhorn and Rhydon, super cool. Chansey goes into Meh again. Don't know when I'd ever use them in a playthrough. They are the choice Pokemon to use in Pokemon Center that Nurse Joy uses, which is quite cute, but yeah, just not really for like, there's nothing to it for me. Tangela, or Tangela as I like to call it, that also goes in Meh. I think Tangrowth is very cool. Its evolution it eventually gets, where it basically just becomes a massive Tangela. Kind of becomes a bit similar to Snorlax a little bit in like how I view it in terms of the design and stuff, which is just this big like lumpy thing that likes to sleep. Kind of reminds me of myself. Kangaskhan goes in good. There was a good episode with Kangaskhan in it, which was quite a sweet episode where the parents lost their kid and they go looking for it in the Safari Zone, and it turns out that he's being raised by Kangaskhan, and he's trying to protect them from like Team Rocket. Cute. Horsey goes in good. Seadra goes in great. I think it's a very cool progression, and I think Kingdra, which is obviously not Gen 1 evolution, even better. But I think it's like a nice progression to go from cute to cool, and I think that's where a lot of these do quite well, is where they go from cute, like Caterpie, and I think Butterfree is quite cool. It goes from cute to cool, Pidgey to Pidgeot to Pidgeotto to Pidgeot, Nidoran, and then obviously Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Like the progression goes from cute to cool, and that's all good. And I think it's the same with Cubone, but Cubone's just cool anyway. Goldeen, one of Misty's choices of Pokemon in the show. I think Goldeen goes in Meh for me, actually. I think it's quite a sort of pretty looking Pokemon in a way, if you know what I mean. Like it's quite, but I wouldn't really, it's like a koi fish or goldfish, I guess, in a way. And then Seaking, which is a koi fish in the evolution, not a fan. Just goes from quite this like sort of pretty kind of looking fish to an ugly one. Downgrade, huge downgrade. And I think Staryu and Starmie both go Meh again. It's just not for me. Just not what I would choose to use in a playthrough. I'd much rather choose a Horsey, Seadra vibe, or a Squirtle, or a Poliwag, or a Psyduck over them as a water type Pokemon. I know obviously they're used in the show, and I quite like they are starfish, but they also kind of look a bit like jewelry, I guess, which I kind of like. But also, I saw this clip of, I think it was Star Me in like the French dub, and it was making some weird noises, very odd noises. Mr. Mime, good. If you did see my ice type Pokemon tier list during the advent calendar, I put Galarian Mr. Mime, and then also its evolution Mr. Rhyme very low. Hate them. The original Mr. Mime I quite like. Is quite creepy in Detective Pikachu, but in the show I like him as well, and I just think his design's kind of cool, and I like the fact that he's like a psychic type and puts up Barry as a mime, and that's just kind of the way he goes about it. I think that's very fun. Next we have Scyther, who for me might be up there for one of my favourite bug type Pokemon. Certainly one of the coolest. I'd be tempted to do a bug type Pokemon tier list in the future. I'm going to put him in great. There's an episode, I'm pretty sure it's an episode where they have a Scyther. They go to a town in the Indigo League, and it's the people that like Scythers and people that like Electabuzzers, and they're like beefing, and it's like, gang warfare between Electabuzzers and Scythers, and Scyther is very cool. And a lot of people will say that Scizor, its evolution that it gets in, I think, Johto, they say, a lot of people online would say that Scizor is better, but I don't know. I'd say Scyther. I'd argue Scyther. I know it becomes Bug Steel, and it looks a lot cleaner, like a lot like, in sort of the design. But I really rate Scyther. I think he's quite underrated. Jinx, the worst. Jinx sucks. I don't get it. I don't get what Jinx is. I don't. It looks almost, weirdly looks almost offensive, like just to look at. It's odd. I don't get it. Not for me. We will move on very swiftly from Jinx. Electabuzz also goes in great, mainly for that episode, and also the noises it makes in the English dub, just really funny. Would definitely recommend looking that up if you don't know what he sounds like. Magmar goes into good because Magmar is good, but he looks like he's got a butt on his head, like his like forehead is butt cheeks. It's just and Magby looks even worse, but just weird. Like, I don't know why has he got butt cheeks on his forehead. I get they're like brows, like if I like screw, like it's like the brows, right? But it just looks like arse cheeks. It's just a weird thing to do. Pinsir, another bug type which I really rate, is going into great. There's an episode in the Johto series with Pinsers and Heracrosses, which is a fun episode where they basically have a turf war. It's quite a good episode, but I do like Pinsir a lot. Tauros is good. I think I prefer the look of Paldean Tauros, because he's like he has different forms and things like that. Like he has a water form and things like that, and he has a fighting type form, which I think is cool. I'll be honest, I think it's better. Magikarp is goated. Gyarados, goated. To keep referencing the show, there's the episode where James, they're all on the SS, is it Queen Anne or something, Princess Anne, something like that. It's some sort of SS Anne. I can't remember the name of the boat, which is essentially like a whole scheme by Team Rocket to get people on board with their Pokemon and steal them. And James buys a Magikarp, and they think it's useless, and they try and get it to swim away. And they basically abuse it to the point where it evolves into a Gyarados and basically tries to fuck them up, and that's really funny to me. Lapras, great as well. Top 5 Ice-type Pokemon of all time, as rated by me. Banger. Ditto, good. I don't actually genuinely wouldn't be able to tell you the full potential of a Ditto in a game, because I've never caught a Ditto in a game. Obviously Pokemon Go I've caught one, but that's not the same, is it? But in terms of an actual playthrough, if you had for example, Let's Go Eevee, I've never actually had a Ditto, so I wouldn't know the potential of its moveset and things like that, so I couldn't really gauge off that. I can gauge it off the show and think it's fun. I like the episode where it's trying to mimic Pikachu and Machamp, but it's got the Ditto face still. That's fun. That's a funny episode. But in terms of gameplay, I wouldn't be able to tell you, to be completely honest. Eevee, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon kind of become a bit iconic, hasn't it? Eevee, it's got Let's Go Eevee, and every new generation that comes out, people are like, are they going to have any new evolutions? What are the new evolutions going to be? If I'm honest with you, I want to see a flying type, a fighting type, a bug type, or a dragon type. Doesn't have to be all of them, obviously. 2 of them, because I think some of the evolutions are really cool. I think some of them kind of suck. For example, Sylveon, Glaceon, but I think some of them are really good, like Jolteon, Umbreon, Espeon, Flareon, and Vaporeon are all very good. Leafeon's pretty cool as well, but I would like to see I think a dragon type and a flying type. Like you could do ears as propellers or something. I think that'd be pretty neat. But the Eevee has become quite the icon, hasn't it, I suppose. It can be a male or female. I'm going to put them in order of the ones I like from most to least, but I think they're all great. Jolteon, I like that it's if you're a stranger or a threat, it's really super like spiky. But if you're like a friend, the spiky pins as like a soft fur. That's quite cool to me. The same with the Flareon main. If it feels threatened or that it can't trust you, it'll burn your hand. But if it can trust you, it'll feel super soft like fur. It's pretty cool. And Vaporeon, the internet has ruined Vaporeon. I'll be honest. Vaporeon is cool, but it just looks. I don't know. The internet. If you don't know, I'm not gonna go into it too much detail because it's some of the stuff that you see on the internet about Vaporeon is gross. But the internet has absolutely ruined Vaporeon. I will be completely honest with you. Porygon, meh, don't care. Ammonite, Omastar, out of the 2 fossil type Pokemons, probably my not the 2 fossil type because there's Aerodactyl as well, but Kabuto and Kabutop's going great. I know I keep bringing it back to this show, but there is a very good episode where they like fall underground into a cave, and they're like surrounded by Kabutos. It's pretty cool, pretty eerie and creepy when you just see the red eyes in the cave and stuff. But Aerodactyl, oh, I've done that weirdly. Why have I put that there? Aerodactyl, also great. It's a dinosaur. If you know me, you know I love dinosaurs. So, a dinosaur Pokemon? Yes, please. Tyrantrum, banger. Aerodactyl is just a pterodactyl, pretty much. The first time I hatched an egg on Pokemon Go, who came out? Aerodactyl. Maybe that says it. Also, there's the episode in the show where I'm pretty sure that's when Charizard evolves and basically saves. Charmeleon evolves into Charizard to save Ash from Aerodactyl and absolutely just like pummels it into a mountain, which is pretty cool. Snorlax, great. I like the Snorlax interactions you have in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, where he's blocking the routes, and he's like one of the only Pokemon that you actually have to battle to catch. There's obviously Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres as well that you have to do the same with, but he's one of them where you wake him up with the poke flute and he becomes enraged and hungry and tries to eat you, so you have to battle him, and if you can defeat him you can catch him. That's the vibe, which I rate it. If you've been napping for that long, you're going to be fucking hungry, aren't you? So don't blame him whatsoever. Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres. Moltres is my least favourite out of the 3 birds. Kind of looks like a big chicken with flames on it. Not, huge. Actually, I think Zapdos is hard. These can go either way. I would have genuinely said Zapdos if you asked me a year ago. I probably would have said Zapdos. But after using Articuno in Let's Go Eevee, kind of gained an extra fondness for Articuno. There's some cool episodes that feature Zapdos in the show as well, which I'm a big fan of. But I would say, personally, Articuno just... Also, in my Let's Go Eevee playthrough, Zapdos did my absolute head in. Didn't want to get caught, beat him, and then used like 40 Pokeballs trying to catch him. Still failed, and he ran away. Or I had to quit because I ran out of Pokeballs. So, you know what? Fuck Zapdos. Articuno's better. Dratini. Dragonair. Dragonite. Now, yeah, that's right. Dratini and Dragonair, there's not much of a difference between them. You would think that Dragonite wouldn't look like that based on Dragonair. But there's an episode in the original Indigo League series where they meet a Dragonite and it's like a Godzilla, and they're in a lighthouse, and it's like coming in through the fog in the light on the lighthouse, and they're like, and it's huge, and it's like, and you think, fuck you know, look at the size of that, and then Dragonite appears later on as like a regular sized Dragonite, and it's weird. I don't really know fully if they explained why that first Dragonite they met was absolutely huge. But I like Dragonite. He's a bit goofy. He's a bit of a goofy guy. And Ash's Dragonite loves a cuddle, which who can blame him? Look at him. I'd cuddle that Dragonite. But also, pretty sure Dragonite featured in my Let's Go Eevee stream. I'm pretty sure it was Eevee, the 3 starters, Articuno and Dragonite. I think that's how it worked in my team, if I'm not mistaken. Or it might not have been Dragonite, actually. It might have been, it would have been Pidgeot. But I think Dragonite maybe appeared, or maybe I've used him in a different stream series. I can't remember, but I do like Dragonite a lot. Kind of similar colouring and stuff to a Charizard, but with smaller wings, and just looks friendlier. But nonetheless, big fan. And finally, Mewtwo and Mew. I've not really fully organised it in a complete order. In terms of within the top 5 is obviously in order, not fans are in order, and then they kind of just fall as in Pokédex order, I suppose, in within, generally speaking. Obviously I put Ghastly and Haunter at the top of great, because they are, but don't get too hung up on the positioning within each tier. It doesn't mean I think Abra is a better Pokemon than Dragonite. It doesn't mean that I think Mankey is better than Mew or Mewtwo. That's not what it means. It just means they're all great for the reasons I've explained. And yeah, that's my list. My top 5. I think no real surprise with Gengar being at the top if anyone knows me or has watched the channel or watched any of the series on the streams. Hitmonchan, Arcanine, Cubone, and Blastoise are my top 5. And obviously the bottom 5. Nice little bit of symmetry there. Didn't realise there was 5 in the top and bottom. There you go. But that's it for this video. If you let me know in the comments what you think, where you'd put which ones. I know there's someone specifically that would put Eevee in their top 5, and that's on them. And I would probably, to be fair, I would also put Eevee quite high because of the Let's Go Eevee. If I'd have played Let's Go Pikachu, I don't think I would have put Eevee anywhere near as high. But I've grown a fondness because of that. But let me know what you think to this. It's probably going to be quite a long video by the time I've gone through all 151. Might just leave it as it is, like very minimal editing, just so you can hear like my thought process and see just the kind of vibes I'm going with. But yeah, this is one that I wanted to do for quite some time. I wanted to do it as like my first kind of like Pokemon sort of one, but I just couldn't be asked initially. But then I thought, you know what? That's not the attitude. I want to talk about all of these Pokemon. This is the generation that I'm most comfortable talking about, and the one I know most about. And I did Sporkle Pokemon quizzes, and I got all of the Pokemon in this 151 in the Pokédex in order. I'll leave a link to that in the description actually, because that's one of my that's a proud moment of mine on this channel. So yeah, if you want to see me do some Sporkle quizzes on Pokemon, check out the link in the description. But for now, I'll leave it there. I've been me. Don't know why I said that. I've been me. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Like I said, let me know if you've got any suggestions for any Pokemon or non-Pokemon related tier lists. But I have been enjoying talking about these, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody, and goodbye.